What I want to do is avoid the tracing, projecting, or gridding, but again remind you to see things in those basic shapes. So taking a drawing, as I have a piece of reference in front of me, and converting it into lines is easy to do if you break it into chunks, little shapes, and work from that. I've taken that ground squirrel reference, the squirrel, and done some basic shapes on it so you could see that, but I'll show you once more how I'm going to come up with these shapes. And it's not going to hurt you to practice, even if it's the same thing a bunch of times, so that you'll learn how to vary things. Maybe one time you see it interestingly through triangles, and another time you see it more in circles. Resist the temptation to take your tracing and use it as a guide, size as, on your drawing. So I'm tempted always to take and do it as a smaller version. I still want to see detail, but that will keep me from using that to check if I'm off, because after a while it gets frustrating if you're the tiniest little bit off and you know that you've got this as your guide. But I want to show you how I'd go through this. I'll take and try to find the circle that's in the head. It's going to help me down the road find a new way to look at this as a linear drawing. If you have an eye that's visible, draw it as a round circle. When you look at the eye itself, you'll see that it's not a circle. So later you're going to be able to take and draw a line through that, but you're still going to have the feel of that circle there. I'll try in some cases to fit the circle in there, but because so little of that eye shows, I just want to remember that it is on that drawing in a certain location, and it'll come into play later. There's nothing wrong for you to take and flip your paper. So if you can't see something and you got to keep checking, you're actually teaching yourself to memorize. So to put a circle in here, you might want to flip and check to see if you've actually got it in the right place. There's nothing wrong because we're trying to get this into a simpler form as we're trying to learn. If I want to simplify it even as a circle, remember previously I was drawing the fingers of the hand. You see some of the structure that's taking place on top of this particular drawing. But this is what I need to start my drawing with. I want to leave a little bit less room on this side and more on this side. So I'm going to move my circle over a tiny bit. Whatever that width is, if I'm not confident about my circles, I can mark off some of the area. I want to keep my lines a little less visible. I'm going to get myself a clean piece of paper to put underneath my hand and remind you that if you're doing any erasing, hopefully your lines are thin enough that you can do it without a lot of pressure. We don't want to damage the paper. If I've already got smudges on here, I'll clean it up. If I took that bigger circle and divided it in half, that's where I see this circle starting. But it goes a little bit beyond that circle. So I will take and do the same thing here, is I'll locate a line that lets me know where this other circle is going to start. So I'm looking at this leftover space and I'm trying to figure out if this starts looking right. So right now I've eliminated the need for rulers. But if I take that same width and draw this circle up to here, I should start seeing something that looks similar to what I started with that tracing. The next thing I want to do is figure out where half of that circle is. And I'll divide that by drawing a line through it in both directions, making 4 quadrants. That helps me locate this eye, and from a glance you can see that this eye, this circle here, comes right about to center, and it's just below or sharing that line on the horizontal. Now I'm starting to see similarity between the gap or the distance here and here, the way I did on my actual tracing. So I see a little bit of room here and a little bit of room, almost an eyeball height above it. And if I've got that happening, I'm feeling pretty confident. I can always adjust, but I'm still keeping these ghost lines. If I took this line and continued it up a little further, I might notice that the ear comes out to that point. All the time I'm using my brain to measure something. I'm thinking, is this height from here to here the same as the eye height? If it is, I got lucky, but I have to keep checking things in my brain or testing for ways to see something. So I might take something as simple as that and check it against that eye and go, yeah, it's pretty close. So that means whatever my eye height is here, it has to correspond the same way that this eye does to that ear on my drawing. If the unit that I'm using for my eye is this tall, the ear has to also share that height. Okay, two things. Whatever happens here with that eye in relation to its other parts, my eye has to work on this drawing. I want you to think about the whole thing in the relationship. If I draw lines down and see where this circle shares almost the same circle as the hand, I might start blocking it in. I'm looking at the space between them and realize that this could be a little higher or this could be a little lower. I can adjust things. I'm trying to get things blocked in first. This circle that I started with initially can be broken into angles, and you start seeing times of 8 o'clock being here, 7 o'clock being here. At 7 o'clock on this circle, when I draw from the center, is where the wrist should start, and the other one shows where the back leg will start. I'm just going to start freehanding some things in. It's okay. Start developing habits where you can train your eye to move your hand in a certain way. The more I train myself what to look at in nature, the easier it's going to be to draw. Think of that pie shape just as being angles that you can automatically see. 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever it is. And you'll have a quicker hand to paper transition. And maybe the most important thing to do now would be to take that eye and just put that little shape in it. That's all I was able to see tracing from this particular piece of reference. That's the way I see an animal in the wild. Breaking it down into those shapes makes it easier to get it from a three-dimensional vantage point down to a two-dimensional surface. It helps me to clean them up now instead of smudging a lot of work later on. If I'm using a big eraser like this and I'm taking off too much, that's where I'll go to that smaller point on this eraser and I'll take and leave smaller lines. I know that in this instance I'm going to want to have some fur that appears to be faint and going off into the background. But I don't want to lose a lot of time doing this because I'm going to do some work in the background to tone it first. I'd rather tone this background, even though it means there's a potential of me smudging it. I'd rather get this outline established so that I can do some background work and not leave a halo around the animal when I try to do it later, afraid to get some of the fur I've spent time doing messed up. I'm going to take a graphite stick, and on top of this one I've marked a 6B. It's hard to see, but I will shave a little bit of this off, and I'll try to mimic the background that I see in this particular reference piece. This area here is dark, and I might actually darken this background a little bit more, but within reason I'm trying to show you that you can do a gradation. And the first thing I'll tell you about a gradation is it needs to start evenly. As light as this is here, I want to do that tone over everything and do a second coat and a third coat and a fourth coat if I want to darken things. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on this because I don't want a lot of swirls to show, but I am conscious of the value I see in this